Guys, welcome to the Limitless One podcast. I'm here with my good friend and massage therapist, Kyle
Make that
Nikkanen.
Limitless 2.
What'd you say?
Now we're Limitless 2 together.
Limitless 2.
Yeah.
So Kyle is my massage therapist. You're currently in osteopathy school, right? Is that how you say it?
Osteopathy.
Osteopathy school.
Yeah.
So, and you're on your way, you're what, a year or two away from finishing? How does that look?
So I've got 2 years under my belt, and it's a 4-year program.
Okay,
And
so
then
Kyle's been my massage therapist now for about 2 years,
Yeah.
right? Been a friend for a long time. Super great energy, great kid, amazing family. I've met the whole family. Very educated outside of massage therapy and personal training and movement. Big on nutrition, big on gut health, big on sun, big on ancestral health. Know a lot about the economy. A very interesting person. And I'm proud to call you my friend, and I'm very grateful that you're my friend too. So you're just a good kid, you're a good dude, and I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to have some conversation about health, about movement, about what you're doing in school, and kind of educate people on some of the conversations that we've had because you have a lot of great information and a very special outlook on the world and a very special outlook on how you live your life as well. So I think a lot of people will benefit from the stuff that you have, and I'm excited to see where you go with your life and excited to see maybe we get into business together and help people, because I truly believe that people like yourself, we need more of them, right? Not only about nutrition, about the reality of the problems in the Medicare system, the problems in our nutritional system, the problems with the grocery within the economy, the depression that's going on, and you carry yourself with an energy that's admirable. And your calming energy with you, and I think anybody that gets to know you is going to learn a lot from you. So I'm excited to talk to you and see what you have to say today.
Oh my gosh, that's like so much gratitude to come from that. Also, like, I'll mirror it as you, that like I'm just like a reflection of you too, right? That these things come into our lives. Yeah, well, I feel the exact same about you.
Well, I feel like that we from the first time I met you, there's certain people you meet. I'm a spiritual person. You are too.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about. Psilocybin and different things like that. You're very educated on that stuff, and both of us have participated in our own healing with that. But the first time I met you, there was a good energy around you, and I'm very much of an energy type person.
Yeah.
And I picked up on it right away. And as we talked about nutrition, we talked about the Medicare system, we talked about healing. And I knew immediately that I would always have you around me, and I would want to learn from you, and I would love to encourage anybody to work with you, right?
Exactly, keep building and sharing together.
Yeah.
No, that's the truth, man.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that we can take this conversation today, too.
100%.
Right? Which is cool.
It might be like a Joe Rogan podcast today where it just goes 5 hours, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk, first of all, let's just talk about what it is that you do. Let's talk about the massage therapy, what you're doing in school right now, where it is that you want to head, so people kind of understand where a lot of this educational talk we're going to talk about, and outlook on stuff and perception, where it comes from, where it stems from, and what gives you that credibility to even talk about the stuff we're going to talk about.
Okay, very true. So I've always been obsessed with human performance because I was a huge competitor my entire life, whether it was like going through soccer or hockey. I was always, like, when I think back to it and I reflect on it, I was always one of the top guys within the area, right? I would be playing at the highest level hockey, playing the highest level soccer, and competing. And so from that, I always looked at ways that how could I get myself better? Just as like you would be looking at it with you going through your bodybuilding, right?
Of course.
Where can I keep getting the competitive edge?
Okay.
And so for me, nutrition was one that really went into high school, and I was super disciplined with things, but also, you grab these little bits of information and then you kind of like hold them too tightly, and I went into different extremes, right? And then we go until you find the balance within it.
Yeah.
So like for me in high school, maybe went a little extreme on certain diets, or like was too clean at some points, and had a kind of a neurotic relationship with food, which you see with so many people, right?
That's me. I've had that in the past.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're trying to get that even filter, being like, oh yeah, I want a good relationship with it where I enjoy the meal, I appreciate the meal, and these kind of things, versus just looking at it as, you know what I mean? Like those little things surrounding it.
Yeah.
So that was with high school. And then in high school, I think school was one of those things too, though, that it was more of a social playground for me.
Of course.
And then I knew that I could always skate by and everything like that.
Yeah.
Got into bodybuilding, grade 9. Even before then, I was actually like sneaking into the YMCA gym with my older brother.
Okay.
And so like you had to be 16 to be on the gym floor. I was 13 in the summertime, like just pretending I was 16.
Anything to get in.
Getting the free gym membership and stuff.
Yeah.
And then like, dude, I remember just how skewed my relationship even was with like, you know, back like the original questions of being like, what kind of protein do you take? That kind of shit.
Yeah.
Hey, you take creatine? Like, those were like the beginnings, right?
Yeah.
And I remember being like, oh yeah, I got to work really hard for my whey protein shake. Or, ooh, it's whey isolate, even cleaner.
Yeah,
and like I really early on got sold into like the marketing of around bodybuilding, right, and nutrition and stuff like that, and found a relationship. And then my relationship with bodybuilding though as well came where when I was 17, I decided to take steroids with an older guy I was working out with.
Story,
right, but that one had a negative.
Impact.
A real pitfall.
Immediately, right? Like it was.
Well, like there was the ascend where I was like, oh wow, this is cool, right? And you go through all those things, and there's a good amount of things that go with it, but I my body reacted negatively to it, like we talked about. Where I have an affinity to convert testosterone into DHT more
very quickly,
and so all those things happen. Got a shit ton of breakout on my
acne.
Right, on my trunk, and I ended up hurting myself around the same time. And so there's this really big like philosophical part of my life where I like for that month where I couldn't walk, I was like there and I was sitting and reflecting on myself and being like the middle child that I am. I was like, I think that was like the first time that I ever asked myself like, well, why did I do that? And then why did I chemically do this, and why did I feel like that I had to do this? Where I was like had all these false idols in my mind at the time, right? Where I was looking up to Arnold and I said, Arnold did it when he was 16. And oh, this guy did it, and like if I want to go this way. And that was kind of where there was like this fork in the road for me, and the turning point. I said, okay, how am I going to get myself back to homeostasis, whatever homeostasis is for my body? How am I going to get my testosterone levels back to normal naturally, and all of these things, right? So that's where I took a big dive into like my own little physiology.
In kind of a natural approach.
Right? Because, I even on the I guess the outskirts of it, the come off, I really relied on different like supplements and things like that, and just eating well and putting attention back to that. And then from that kind of like transition point, I fell back in love with just the weights and the movement and the feeling, right? That I initially got into it for, and I had lost because I was trying to accomplish something else, or for vanity or for whatever it was. And then, but dude, that was like my big awakening moment. And I wanted to stop that because in your last interview with Dr. Khan, when you said you went to Hawaii, and then you had this kind of epiphany moment where you said, I'm going here, but I want to go longevity.
So I took my first anabolic steroids when I was 18. I'm 38 now. So that was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago, right? It was, I bought Russian blister pack D-balls from a friend. And I could only afford to get 100 of them, and he said take 5 a day, and I took 3 a day, and I blew up. I had a very positive response. Everybody was like, it was crazy. Like for me, I've never had any side effects besides when I got into my bodybuilding career a little bit with a little bit of my blood markers and then hair loss. But back then it was a very positive response in the younger years. Never had any mood swings with it. Felt happier, felt very positive towards it, lots more energy, more charismatic, more confidence. For me, it was a very positive thing.
And you were hitting off all your goals.
It was such a minute thing. It was so crazy when I look back, like versus when I was trying to turn pro versus what I did then and what I got out of it. Like I literally added like 15 pounds in like 30 days and I was like taking nothing, right? So then I fast forward through the whole story of what I went through, and sometime maybe I'll go into detail with that about, the abuse that came along with just the work ethic is what it was, just so driven, that Spartan type mentality of like, I'll die for this kind of, that's what it was literally in my mind. Like, I don't care. And then I had all the injuries. I had the tendonitis in both knees. I had the phase 1 separation, the AC joint, diagnosed arthritis in both shoulders, tendonitis in my elbows, just wasn't able to train really well anymore. Starting to have some insulin resistant issues from using insulin, from using growth hormone, and your thyroid and stuff getting messed up, and was going to need to correct that and take a step back, and just wasn't feeling healthy at all, and having some health problems and carrying all that mass and didn't feel well. And then I was in it was kind of a build up to when I would do my visualization in the morning, I would be visualizing myself like when I'm like 45 and 50, right?
True.
And I pictured myself having my own jet, having my own yacht, having a winery in France and in Italy, you know, traveling the world, having this big home, having children with Nat, taking my mom and dad all over the world and giving them millions of dollars, and just like, and starting these charities and becoming a great public speaker and going back and helping kids and like being this great, strong role model that's been through shit and is like this stoic fucker that just able to give good, empathetic and sympathetic encouragement and positivity and strong stoic information. And I pictured myself, you know, going to take salsa lessons and dancing and dressing nice and having that nice gray beard and just being charismatic and enjoying life and being full of laughter. And, you know, and I see so many people in their 60s and 70s and they're giving up. I'm like, that's not going to be me. And this all went through my head over time, but then it all just flashed. I'm sitting on the beach with my feet in the water, and I decided right there, I stood up, brushed the sand off my ass and said, I'm done.
True.
And it was that day. And I never, ever, from that day, I literally just went on to like testosterone therapy. I attempted to come off everything with my doctor's guidance. We tried for 3 months, and it was very clear that I had to take a small dose of testosterone, which if you look at my blood markers, I have perfect blood panels, like perfect.
Beautiful.
Heart, cholesterol, like liver, kidneys, everything. And my testosterone is within the natural range, is right in the middle. It could even be higher, but I don't need to take it. I feel good.
No, exactly.
So that's where it needs to be. And funny enough, I go to Shoppers Drug Mart and all those years of doing all that stuff. And now I go to Shoppers and work with a doctor and with a pharmacist.
Yeah.
You know, so that for me, it was one day I chose, but it was a build up to get there.
100%.
And now that's how I'm trying to live my life. Like, I still like to have a little bit of alcohol. I like red wine. Usually I drink red wine on Friday. Through the week, maybe today we'll have a drink too.
Whoa.
I like a little scotch. I love tequila.
We could. Yeah.
Not much of a marijuana guy, once in a while, here and there. Used to. Definitely participated with other stuff. I'm on a mission to become spiritually sound, physical sound, financially sound. But I'm really taking that wellness approach, which is what this conversation is kind of based around from most of our conversation. And I want to get back. I've realized that, you know, the Medicare system and the information we're being fed with how we live our lives, working out, working hard, sleep less, work more time on the treadmill, restrict calories, it's all a bunch of bullshit. Like, if you're not well in your mind and you don't feel well, your body doesn't even lose the weight it should. It looks soft, it looks run down, it looks tired. If you're not getting a good night's sleep, if you're not getting enough sun, and sunblock I don't believe is good for you either. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
And I think we should be spending more time in the sun. We need to get our feet in the ground. We need to get in the
agree.
ocean, the compression from the ocean, the salt on our skin. You know, we need to love each other. We need more hugs. We need more talking. We need more communication. We need more community, more laughter in our life, something to be hopeful for, something to move towards. Nutritious food. We need wild caught fish. We need pasture raised chicken. We need organic vegetables, good fructose. You know, we need to pay attention to when we're going to bed, to when we're getting up. We need some structure in our life. But I think that overall, I've went from being a drastically unhealthy bodybuilder, pushing the limits and thinking that, you know, I had to do all that to get to where I wanted to be, to completely a 360 to, you know, living this whole
100%
healthy life.
But
right?
I think in order for you to actually have come through that, like, I think we need to experience those extremes. Sometimes, right?
Bro,
100%. Right?
I wouldn't be who I am without it. I
Yeah.
couldn't, because you can't even, how do you even tell somebody, like, you know, how do you even talk to somebody about that if you've never been there? Like, we had this conversation before, you and I, about how people that are always peaceful and they're like super zen, and I'm like, oh, it's cool, but I don't think you can truly enjoy relaxation without like turning it up. Like, if you've never been in a fight, if you've never been in a stressful situation, if you've never ran until your feet were blistered, if you've never worked out until your nose bled, I'm not saying that's a good thing, I don't recommend doing that, but we've all been there, right? But or if you've never pushed your body that intensely where you feel like you're going to collapse and you don't have anything left, or you've never dieted for months on end and zero carbohydrates for a whole month to the point where you're at 4% body fat and every alarm in your body is going off screaming get up and eat because you're going to die, and you push through that, you really truly don't know and appreciate the relaxation side. There's a negative. You can't always, like, the reality of it is life isn't always honky-dory. Life's not always easy, right? And people try to pretend that everything's calm, and I try to play that part too, but sometimes you're going to get angry.
Right. And that duality, though, is what makes it interesting. Actually.
Well, that's what makes the other so enjoyable,
it's
right?
It's true. Yeah,
like,
it's so true.
You have hot and cold, you have dark and light, you have hate and you have love, and you have all these things, cold, or you have wet and dry. Like, everything's about a balance in life. and those certain things get out of balance at certain times. But I don't think you can just you have to experience some shit, right, to have a really good outlook on anything in life, I think. 100%. And I really appreciate what I went through, and whether it affects me in the future or not, I'm still grateful for everything I went to. I mean, look at the character and resilience that I got from that experience, right?
And the tests that you put yourself through.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, it's interesting that yours was a shorter stint.
Yeah.
Where you really realized it quickly, and lucky for you, right? Because now you're able to live the life the way you are. And I feel like you're a very happy person.
Yes. And I think that was one of the darkest times for me too, though, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think so much occurred at that one time, and the succession between having a bunch of things and riding that high, and then losing it all, and also being this super active person and almost losing a bit of your identity too.
Yeah.
And then also then asking, like, who the hell am I? Yeah. You know what I mean? And trying to figure out from there, where do I go?
Yeah, and that rings strong. That rings strong to me, because I was a 260-some pound bodybuilder.
Dude,
and everybody like
reinvented.
Yeah, like I've reinvented them. That's a good way to put it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, when I would walk into a room, there's a certain amount of like that's what people talk about. Like they talk about that. There's a certain amount of respect. Everywhere you go, you get looked at and stuff. So like, they're part of my, like, being 100% honest. True. Like, I had this like little boy friend. Like, I started out in weightlifting never to like impress girls or anything. It was about my brother kind of got into it, and I read all the magazines, and I was like obsessed with Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. I wanted it, yeah. Well, and where I come from, buddy, which hopefully you get to go with me sometime. On Friday and Saturday nights, they're like literally logmen that carry around 60-pound chainsaws and like smoke rolled up darts and just like fist fight in the Legion parking lot. Like, it's coal mining, lumberjack, like tear your head off type masculinity, right?
True.
Good people.
Yeah.
But East Coast, like fisherman type, like, so like where I came from, it wasn't about like everybody dressed in flannel, and like it was cool to go moose hunting and deer hunting, and you drove around on a 4-wheeler with a chainsaw and a gun.
That was manliness. That was what the girls. Yeah.
So for me, it was more of like, it was never about like chicks. I just got into it for that, and then also, but then I was always amazed by masculinity, like the building my body, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of got into it for that reason, and then eventually it just I got into competitive bodybuilding because I was a weightlifter. Like, I loved working out. Me and my brother used to ride the bus to the gym, right, which was about an hour from my parents' house, the opposite way from the school. So we would ride a bus to the gym, which was in the basement of a gas station, by the way.
No way.
So our first gym, we worked out in the basement at home. Yeah. So there was a Carla and Kevin, I think, are their name. They opened up, Carla and Kevin, that's who they are. It's been so many years, right? Because those are my teenage years. They had a gas station, and it was like a convenience store up top, and then they had this basement. So it was an old house converted into a convenience store with gas pumps. They put 2 tanning beds, one tanning bed in the basement. There's one tanning bed, and then there was like a dumbbell rack up to 60 pounds, a squat rack, a little universal station, a couple treadmills, a bike, and that's where we worked out, right? So like it was, we used to ride the bus from school. We'd get there, I guess school's done 3:30, 4 o'clock. We'd get there at like 4:30, and then we would my dad would leave us there till like 8 or 9, and he would come get us, right? And then my brother, as we got older, we would drive the van and stuff like that.
Oh, freaking way.
Yeah, the old GMC van. We would go out.
How much older is your brother than you?
So Josh is 4. So Josh is 4 years, like 4 years old, 3-4 years older than me, and then my oldest brother is in his 50s now.
True.
Yeah.
So like that's such similar stories though.
Yeah. Well, you and your brothers are kind of similar. You guys are all just hitting the weights and trying to get yoked and.
Literally, right? And then just like even the old home workouts in the backyard and stuff like that, where it all originated from. Or like I remember being in like grade 7, and again there was that idea of like the protein shakes were like the best thing ever. Yeah. And so like doing push-ups and then going to my dad and being like, Dad, can I have a protein shake?
Yeah.
Like, because he was the one that was buying it, right?
Yeah.
And then in the summer of like grade 8, when I faked the YMCA membership, our dad would just drive us there, which was 30 minutes from our house, just up Bayfield.
Yeah.
And he would just drive us there and then drop us off and be like, all right, I'll pick you up in 3-4 hours, and we would just stay there
and just hit it, man.
Yeah,
do everything.
And we learned so much about overtraining. But I was the same as you, where I picked up my first dumbbells because I saw my older brother doing it.
Yeah.
And then also, like, from that, what was the next gift we got for Christmas? Was the Arnold Encyclopedia Bodybuilding. We got the wider Master Blaster. I was reading Mike Mentzer's books and shit like that. Like, dude, I was programming when I was in grade 9, and like me and Garrett would do those workouts. High intensity, all of this stuff.
Very cool.
And even we would do the Arnold 2-a-days stuff.
Oh,
like
would
that.
you? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
and
like you're just back then though too. Like you
not eating enough though.
No, dude, I never ate enough.
Yeah.
Never ate enough. Like I remember reading. I can't remember exactly what. Well, back then there was no internet for me, right? I never even seen a computer until I was 18. So there was like and then living in a small town, there was nobody that was like that you could even get advice from. Like even I remember one of my high school hockey coaches couldn't even skate. Like he used to coach from the boards. That's how limited we were on resources for leaders. He would just stand from the boards and yell. He couldn't even skate, and he was teaching us how to skate. So like we just, we had what we had. So I remember getting old magazines that were like 10 years old, and I remember one had a picture of Johnny Jackson. Remember Johnny Jackson?
Oh yeah.
So Transit Branch Warren. There was a picture of him biting a piece of broccoli, and there was like an article saying about like his favorite vegetable was broccoli, and he'd eat broccoli with every meal. And I was like, well, fuck, like I'm gonna eat broccoli with every meal.
Yeah, legit,
right?
Dude. You take those little snippets.
Oh my god!
And then it became the word that you had to hang on
broccoli.
to, right? Like I remember, I was against putting like. I wanted to be lean everything because remember how I feel like in the 90s and on, maybe even
no fat in the
80s,
90s.
Everything
it was all about carbs and lean
fat.
Protein, white fish, white chicken,
right. So it was like, and then so I followed suit. I was like, oh yeah, well lean meat's the best. Yeah. And I steered clear, and it's total contrast to what I do now, right?
Yeah,
like
I do the fatty meat.
I freaking love the nourishing fats because you realize that that's the shuttle to all the good nutrients, stuff, all the micronutrients. You're like, holy crap.
I don't even eat chicken now, dude, unless I buy a meal out.
Yeah.
Like I love chicken I'll eat it once in a while, but mostly I just eat red meat, whole eggs, and salmon.
Some good chicken thighs every now and
then. Yeah, like I like them. I just don't.
No, exactly. It's not on the hierarchy list.
Like Stan Effernan says, have you ever seen a jack chicken?
No, legit.
That's why I eat cow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why they were eating duck eggs too.
But I think it's on a micronutrients profile level. Like chickens, I mean, it's not. It's so insuperior to like salmon, like a wild caught salmon or a grass fed, or cow or bison,
right?
Or elk
and
or something.
That animal's been through some shit,
bro. Like it's fighting grizzly bears in Alaska,
fighting them off,
right? Literally fighting them off, swimming up
taunting them,
swimming up waterfalls and eating like grub worms that fell into the water, and just fighting its way through life and like swimming miles and miles and miles just to lay its babies. Yeah, like it's full of energy.
Upstream, keep going.
Let's talk. So. We're going to talk more about food and about energy and about dead food and food in boxes and stuff like that, and a little bit about the system. And I'd like to talk about, the
system is a good one too, actually.
100%.
Because that goes right in with the food, man.
I do not care how long this goes. I'm not doing this for views. I'm doing it because I love it, and I hope at some point I bring on enough cool guests that it makes a bit of a stir and people want to listen. So we're just going to talk. That's it. Okay. And wherever it goes, that's where it goes. Again, why did you choose massage therapy? Out of all the things, because you're coming from, I think in my mind, a lot of that was inspired from your dad, and the pain that he was in. Yeah. And am I right by saying that?
And when I look back at it subconsciously, 100%.
You didn't realize that's where so,
100%.
Because massage therapy leads in, a lot of people don't realize most massage therapists know more than most personal trainers. Than even kinesiologists. Like, so much about anatomy and about a movement, about impingements and imbalances and how to correct it. And then if you take somebody that has the weightlifting background like you and you put that knowledge into it, and then your drive to learn more about the body and about health, like you're one of the when I speak to you, you're just as educated, more educated than most of the doctors or physiotherapists that I've spoken to.
And that's the level that I want to keep going on, right? And being seen on.
So let's talk about the progression, why you chose massage therapy, and where are we heading? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Essentially what had happened was after high school, I was actually I went through a couple phases, right? I was anti-school for a bit. And then I went traveling, lived in Europe, did some cool stuff. Yeah. And then I wanted to come back home, right? And just kind of figure some things out. I ended up enrolling into a psych program through Laurentian University here. Okay. I was doing the psych program, but it was also one of those things that you're just in a big university, you're just a number. And I'm doing it, but I'm not passionate about it. Like I'm reading things, I'm skating by, getting my 70s or whatever. And then the one summer in second year, basically I got a government grant to start an entrepreneur program. And in that program, I did an urban gardening or urban agriculture thing. Cool. Okay. So basically the business idea was that I was going to do edible landscapes. So for people, instead of a front yard or a backyard, let's do some cool things. Let's grow some kale. Let's grow some potatoes. And then we'll have kind of a community share thing. I could sell stuff at the farmer's market. I'll use your land because I don't have any, but you have some. It was kind of that exchange. Okay. And there's like different progressive areas all over the place that kind of do that.
Okay.
So I was kind of just like trying to piggyback off those ideas and be like, yeah, that's cool. Essentially what I did though was I put most of my time into 2 gardens. I like turned my whole yard into a garden, and I took like the money I got from the grant and really like got some nice things and did it like that way, right?
Yeah.
And dude, that summer, it was something beautiful because like I really like connected back with the land, and I saw like you plant this seed and this beautiful resilient thing wants to grow.
Yeah.
And it went from there, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm doing this with my hands. I'm digging in the soil. I'm barefoot in that.
Wonderful.
And I have this connection. Yeah. And then I had just started at Goodness Me Too.
Okay.
So I was already getting into that nutrition side, and we were talking with naturopaths, talking about physiology, talking about all of these different pathways that go on.
Yeah.
And so that summer I had a big change of heart, and I said, I got to get out of the psych program, and I got to do something with my hands and something about physiology in healthcare.
Okay.
Because I was super passionate about all these things. Nutrition especially changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, that summer, pulled the trigger and enrolled in the Fast Track Massage Therapy program.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-year program at Georgian, or you could do it other places.
Okay.
But 3-year program, but I did it through the summer, so it became a 2-year program.
Very cool.
But then I also, after enrolling in it, I knew it was just like the gateway point for me, where I was going to learn really good introductory knowledge on physiology, on anatomy, pathology, all these little things, right? And start learning off it. And it was going to be the base that I could continue building off. And then I also knew massage was this career that I could do from a part-time basis, but always have enough that I could keep doing more education, right?
Okay.
And so from massage, I knew there was a pathway to osteo. There was a direct entry.
Yeah.
And osteo was like the next thing. Like osteo has such a really cool history in the United States.
Yeah, and I kind of consider you a healer. Like, I feel like in a past life you were probably a healer.
You know what, dude? I think there is some stuff like that, and I would be interested in doing like a past.
Well, you have a
life
healing
regression.
energy. You have a healing energy to you. And I don't know if that's just something your mom and dad do too, though. So I don't know if that's like a family thing or if it's something I think is a very organic. I would say to the family. It seems very native to the family.
True.
But on top of that, like, let's talk about
just
what
love.
Yeah, well, I think there's your mom's and your dad.
But even that's the truth in your nature too, though, eh? Because there's like a care to even when you speak, there's like a nice care to it.
Yeah, though, being 100%. So my mom and dad very much similar to your family. Yeah. I was brought up like that, but I was also a bit of an angry kind of teenager, and then in my 20s had a shitty ego, right? Just not what I look back at some of the stuff, the way that I've said stuff to people or treated people, and I'm very reflective of it and very self-conscious of my wrongdoings, and try very hard now to be a good person on a daily basis. And I'm definitely who I am organically at my soul is a very kind person. Yeah. But somewheres along there, I don't know if it was just that there was parts of me where I look back and I'm not proud of. And it's definitely the building blocks of who I am today. 100%. But I wouldn't say organically I am the person that you are, but I can proudly say now that I've worked on myself enough that I am there, I would say that have something very similar, and that's what makes our friendship so unique, right?
The daily practice.
Yeah. Like I can, but it's also my self-awareness of like the things of anytime I was unfair or disrespectful to people or egotistical or short with them, or we all have problems, right? And for me, like but what's luckily for me, I'm very, very self-aware, and I'm very hard on myself, but in a good way, in a constructive way, not in a negative way, not like beating myself down, more of a building myself up.
Yeah.
So I could look at myself and clearly see, like, you need work in these areas, dude.
Yeah.
Like the
but
way you
also
treat.
That main picture in the background is you looking at your higher self too.
Yeah, that's
like
that's 100%. Yeah.
Down the line, whatever it was. Even when you were talking about you visualizing on the beach, the old gray bearded fucking lovely dude, right?
Yeah. Everybody loves a gray beard. I'm gonna get it.
Yes.
I'm gonna get a hair transplant, dude. I'm gonna have the gray stripe.
Dude, every
the gray stripe and the gray beard. Right?
Every episode turns into a hair transplant.
Maybe a neck tat. I don't know. Whatever. I'm gonna live a long life, right?
You're supposed to be getting neck tat too.
Yeah. So let's talk about where you're headed, right? So we kind of know what got you into massage. Everybody knows what a massage therapist is, but you're a great massage therapist.
Thank you.
You're a healing massage therapist. Some people are just strong as fuck and cause a lot of pain. I feel like you're above that. Like, you know how to move the body, you know how things tie in, and you know how to assess people, and you use out of the box thinking because of the research that you've done, and I think the inspiration you take from some of the stuff you're using on me is like hey, Donnie Thompson, this power lifter, like we're going to do this decompression movement,
100%.
like hey, like Stan Effernan said this, like hey, like we're going to talk about this phio person or this healing or this doctor, like, or it's coming from osteopathy school, man.
Exactly.
like you're like talking about spinal fluid and doing treatments on my head and my, you know, like these different things that like I've been to a lot of massage therapists, like a lot, and some of them are great because they're strong, and when you're like a bodybuilder you need that, and then some of them don't care, and then there's other people that are using different, like they're just healers, right, and they get the body and they find the pain and they see how people move and they watch how they walk, and I feel like that's how what you do. So where's the end game? Like, where are we going with this? What if right now I could wave a magic wand and give you all the money to invest in whatever the hell we're going to do? Like, because I know you want to help people.
Exactly.
Right? Where are we going?
Dude, so
what's the goal?
Well, end game for myself educationally is to get through osteopath school. So get it's diploma in osteopathic manual practitioner. Also, I'm going to coincide that. I have actually this week I've got a phone interview with the naturopath school.
Very cool.
So I want to be a naturopathic doctor. And then from that, I want to like parlay that into being like just functional medicine all the way, right? And understand and look at people as a whole person, right? Versus these, like we said, dude, if we look at the system, Western medicine, the way it has formed itself
corrupt.
As an assembly line, it is absolutely corrupt. Everybody knows it. All my doctor friends know it. I've got a doctor friend that's in psychology. He's almost a psychiatrist, and even the way he goes through like the CAMH things, and he goes, "Oh my God, dude, this is abysmal. The waiting list, the way they treat people.
It's horrible.
It's literally like if you have a person come in for emergency, it's how am I going to get you out of here quicker because you are a problem on my hands. You're having an attack or a panic attack or going through some type of episode. How am I going to get you out of this room quicker?" And that's the same thing with all of the relationships. And I know I'm speaking generally because there's fantastic doctors out there.
Absolutely.
And there's really good-hearted people out there.
Absolutely.
But also they have to play ball within the system that's made, and it is an assembly.
And they're working with what they were taught.
That too, right? And because you get indoctrinated into those schools of thought, and that's why also I always try and keep open-minded, like you said, where it's like I want to pull from these people. This person would never get accepted here because he doesn't align with this box here. But in reality, he's getting results and it's doing beautiful things, right? And there's so many different umbrellas of health.
Well, and I think where we're gone wrong is that, you know, the Medicare system is really good at like, you just had a heart attack and we're going to save your life.
100%.
You just got hit by a car, we're going to save your life. Amazing.
Like you said,
miracle
emergency medicine, fantastic.
Insane. That's what it's all about. Like that's what like you got cellulitis or whatever it's called or whatever, like, or I think that's what it's called. It's like a bacteria or something like that. Cellulosis or whatever it's called. Antibiotics. Like, we wouldn't be here without it.
There you go.
But then it gets to the point where we're just prescribe antibiotics to the point where we get people sick again. Like you know what I mean? Or we can't. Why did the person even have the heart attack? Well, we can't even figure out how to like.
Truth. Like and then that's one of the things too that also has me going this other route. Is because I was super close with my nono. So my grandfather, and his first cardiac arrest was because they gave him the wrong medication. So there was a disconnect between his doctor and his pharmacist, and so then that resulted in him having cardiac arrest. And then once you have like any cardiomyopathy, any issues with your heart, your lifespan is going to be significantly shortened, right? And so that pretty much spelled it out for him too, right? And he ended up with like just a plethora of issues, and just to see this strong man at the end of his ropes, and it was just like a huge wake-up call for me too. And it sprinkled in almost an eye-opening moment for me because I saw so many of my aging relatives being dependent on these monthly prescriptions, right? And you're like, how did we do it before? Or like, do you really need this? And why are you on a...
Well, when I hear about some of the prescriptions some of my family and stuff is on, like, do you ever go to to a circus or a fair and you got the balloons on the wall and you throw darts and try to pop a balloon? I'm like, that's literally what's going on.
Dude, literally. And even what you said about antibiotics too, right? It's like you come in with a symptom and it said, well, we'll throw this at you. And if it feels better or if you feel better afterwards, then it worked. And it runs the course. I'm not going to do any further tests. I'm not going to ask any more questions. And the same thing goes with like, I know so many people that are going in with some type of acid reflux or
Yeah.
GERD or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then they're getting like an antacid or
Yeah.
proton pump inhibitor or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's throwing off their whole stomach acid base. They're going, oh yeah, like I'm not getting acid reflux anymore. But guess what these people are? They're going to become chronically anemic. They're going to have all of these things because you need that stomach acid to absorb iron. You need that stomach acid to even assimilate, like to get B12 and stuff like that. That are all part of the creation of new red blood cells, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, man, I'm super lethargic. I'm super whatever. And it's like, well, dude, you just trace it back. How long have you been on that? And it's just like, oh my gosh, so many people's eyes open
100%.
when they think back to it. But
yeah.
And I call prescriptions like the lady who swallowed the fly sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
Then that thing, and it's helped with that, but then she needs the next thing to help with that thing. And it's just.
Well, like, I don't know exactly the stats on it, but I'm pretty sure that it's like America and Canada are one of the only two countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to market directly to the consumer on television. Europe doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
Like you know how we see these commercials are like, take this pill for your diarrhea. It may cause liver disease and heart disease and blindness and you might lose your leg, really but you won't poop your pants.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Some side effects may include.
Yeah, it's like, and it just goes on and on and on. I'm like,
but it's like a really happy
guy
guy.
had to stop to have a drink of water. Yeah, he's like super happy because he doesn't have to wear it. Like, it's insanity, and then that's been normalized.
Dude, yeah, that's like you're.
Like there's nothing worse than working hard to fix a problem that doesn't need fixed. When in reality, like, it could have been just a small change in the diet.
Dude, literally,
in the nutrition,
the most
right?
simple things. Even like you said, like when you look at the profound effects of just walking barefoot can have on a person and on their blood pressure.
And why is this information not mainstream? Like when I talk to somebody about grounding, they think they almost think you're crazy. I'm like, oh,
because you can't market it. It doesn't have a dollar.
The
almighty dollar.
I know.
Yeah. But here's the other thing too. When you talk about like some of the sanctions that are in Europe versus the United States and Canada, the other issue there is like, where I guess you would get into the argument about the system where it'd be like, but then it's not a free market, or why are these people allowed to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where people are like, well, they should have the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
But then you get these giants that monopolize it.
Yeah, well, I think you should allow your doctor to decide that. Why is a pharmaceutical company marketing directly to the consumer that's sitting home, that's doing nothing else in their life to try to correct that issue, and they're like sitting there and they're like, oh, I'll just take that pill and it'll make me better. But they don't know about and they overhear all the side effects that are there versus like a doctor that has a good heart and has the education. Why aren't they just educated on what those prescription drugs are and then maybe possibly implement them, you know?
Yeah, or
not have you come ask your doctor.
Right,
hey,
or what alternatives. And then, but I also can empathize with the other side for some doctors too, because like you've seen it too with personal training, is there's some people that also, even though you may take them to the water, they're not going to drink it. You're going to say, hey, if you do a couple of these lifestyle modifiables, you like everything's going to be better. But then that person's like, nah, I'm going to stick to my Diet Pepsi. Yeah. You know, and you're like,
you're 100% right.
The human condition is such an interesting thing, right? Especially you and me.
Yeah.
To these points of being like so passionate about health and being like, I feel so great. I want to teach people about it because there's so many beautiful pillars in my life because of the things that I do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think you're right, because I think so many doctors that I've spoken to, not all of them, but a lot of them, I feel like they're just like they get into it like they're going to make a bunch of changes. Yeah. And they get into it and they realize that, you know, like they're going to be like if you go speak to a GP, like, and you've never met them, like, do you smoke? How many times a week do you drink? These are the questions they're asking you, right? What does your diet look like? Do you drink water? How's your sleep? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and then they're just expecting you to like eat like crap and smoke and drink, and like that's who they're dealing with on a regular basis. You know, they're dealing with people that are diabetic that don't even change their diet and just take more insulin. Yeah. You know, and that's what they're dealing with.
Shave me, doc.
Yeah.
Shave me.
And I think that's where it comes down to, is I think we've just lost self-responsibility.
100%. And
self-accountability.
Self-accountability, and we've put that realm onto a pedestal too. Yeah. Where it almost creates this divide where we almost feel like the majority feels so helpless, and they're like, if anything bad ever happens to me, I can't deal with it. It's going to be on this person's hands. It's going to be on
this person's hands. Yeah. Yeah. And there's one thing that's sad about that is you are putting it on the other, but is it just neglect, or do you literally believe that you don't have the power to heal yourself? Because I believe that most people can regenerate to an extreme level. Mm-hmm. Like, there's always going to be conditions that are just nobody's fault besides a genetic problem whatever it is. Maybe it's been like that since birth or whatever. But like for the biggest part, a lot of us can get a lot better.
100%. And a lot of the things that I've been reading, especially on like genetic research and epigenetics, is they're saying the environment, that all of those things, the things that we consume, the things that we're around, the things that we're feeding into, all this, that 90% is what's influencing our genetics, our genes and all of that, all the expression. Your genes is only 10%, really. You're saying the rest is that environment.
100%.
Right.
Well, like it's as simple as like, I don't know where I've heard this. I can't remember what book I read it in, but like if you were born in China and you grew up, like say you were born and then a Chinese family adopted you, and you never heard of Canada, everything you know right now would be like you would only speak Chinese. Like you would only, so your environment's everything. You know, what the culture taught you about how you believe women should be treated, or how what our food should look like, our taxes, socialism versus capitalism, you know, Marxism, all these different things. You'd be completely, so your health is the same. It's like whatever 100%. Your environment is and whatever you eat, whatever you drink. I think more than anything, it's what you think. Totally. I have met people that are overweight, that eat like hell, that are some of the healthiest people that I know because they're so well in their mind. They're happy, man. Like they're just well. Like anytime you're around, nothing really seems to bother them too much. They're just well. Like that's the best way to. I don't think they're healthy, but they're well.
But I love that, right? And you go, that's beautiful. But then again, there's gonna come a time where that balancing scale is still gonna fall. Yeah. So like I understand where it's just like they've got that on wraps, but if they're neglecting physical or spiritual health or whatever, or I suppose if that you'd look at it like that, but like. They're neglecting that, then eventually that's probably going to feed back into their own mental health too, right? Because if they're not taking care of that food, what are you doing with the building blocks that are actually building that, right? Yeah. So there's like a...
It definitely all goes together. Yeah. What I meant by saying that, I guess, is like I have met people that do everything right and they're just a miserable person and their health breaks down.
So true.
And then I've met people that just like, not that they eat, you know, like donuts for... like breakfast and stuff, but they're just overweight. They drink too much alcohol. Maybe they smoke cigarettes. Like I've met lots of people that smoke cigarettes into their 90s and drank scotch every day, and they're happy as shit, and like they die at 98, and they're like a lot of that has to do with genetics, but I feel like just being happy and well.
Genetics and perception. So like this brain is our own little pharmacy, right? And then the way we perceive things then also is what stimulates us to produce kind of that natural neurotransmitter cascade and all those things. So I was listening to a podcast with, you ever listen to Huberman Lab?
Yes.
Alex Huberman? Yes. And so we had Dr. Robert Sapolsky on. So they're both Stanford boys. But I like Sapolsky. He's the bearded psychologist
a little smarter than me.
No, dude.
No, yeah, you know what I mean. There's some intelligent guys out there.
They're sure smart boys. But he's basically talking too about our perception of an event, right? And so we get this input from our environment. And he's saying, like, say you were this guy in this race and you won the race. But, you know, you'd think that you would then get a cascade of dopamine, testosterone kind of surge through you because you just had a victory. But the perception is, what if that time wasn't as good as what your personal best is? So then you feel let down, and it actually maybe result in cortisol or result in something else. Whereas the guy that came 60th in that race, but he said, holy crap, I thought I was going to die during that race, and I didn't. He's going to get a surge of dopamine, a surge of testosterone. So it's all going to be perception-based, right?
It's all perception-based.
Right?
It's such an amazing thing that we set ourselves up for failure like that, and I'm super guilty of that, right? Like super guilty of that. That's one of the things that is a flaw in my, I shouldn't say in my character, and because I completely see it, is like, there's been a lot of victories that I had, and then I get there and I don't enjoy it at all. It's not what I thought it was going to be, and you know, and I don't. Then I look at, you know, a lot of the stuff that I've done, right? But I don't. I'm a happy person, but I'm not the happiest I've ever been in my life right now because of just everything that's going on, right? So like being 100% honest, like I should be so grateful, and I am. I practice it, but I have to. It's not like I wake up and like all day long I'm just like. Ding. Like I'm constantly let down and constantly have to work on myself and my gratitude to pull myself back, right? But I look at like what I have in my life and what I'm doing, I'm like, dude, I should be at a 10 all fucking day.
True. But
you know, but I'm not.
And at least you have those tools though to remind you.
To bring me back.
Exactly.
They'll come back down to, it doesn't take me long. Usually sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it takes a night's sleep and then I'm back, right? But it's I'm reading a book right now. What's it called? I think it's called Unfuck Yourself or On.
Oh, really?
Have you heard
No,
of that?
I haven't.
I'll send you a picture of it. It's I read about a book a week, right? So I blast through them really quick, especially when they're not big reads. I read High Performance Habits. It took like 10 days for me to read that. That's a thick book. It's like this. But then I opened up this one. The first couple chapters, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, it's all about, the book is kind of about that. But when I first started reading it, I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, oh, well, I'll carry on. I'm going to read it because obviously I can't agree with everything. And then as I went on, I'm like, no, it makes sense. But that's what it's all about. So the book kind of starts out as about this alcoholic author. I guess it's based on a true story. And he just like was a womanizer, spent all of his money, worked at the post office, and he was a writer. He would get drunk every night and just work on his typewriter and write these stories. Wrote dozens of books that never got accepted. Just slept with people's wives and like fought all the time. And he would drink himself until he'd fall off the chair and like wake up in the morning and go to work at the post office. And then finally, some book company accepted one of his novels and took a run at him, and he ended up becoming very successful and a millionaire and sold a bunch of his books. And he was still a drunk and a womanizer. And like,
but he was writing books on.
Yeah, he was writing books on. The book that became famous was something about working at the post office, like just a postman's life kind of thing. But they were just saying that like he was still just as miserable when he won, but he had even said like, I'm just a miserable fart. So it's talking about that not everybody's meant to be great as much as everybody says we're supposed to be great. Everybody can be great. Anything's achievable. And the book is kind of based on bringing yourself down to reality of saying, and they did a great comparison. One was, I forget the guy's name now because I'm not a big heavy metal guy. But it was talking about, I think it was like in the late 70s, this guitarist was in a band. The band had just got signed, got a record deal the day before the record deal got accepted. The band members got together and fired him. And they gave him a bus ticket to go back to LA from wherever they were at. So he was like crying the whole way home. And then when he got back home, he was over it, cleaned himself up, said, I'm going to create a band, and I'm going to create the greatest heavy metal band ever. And he went on to founded Megadeth. So he became Megadeth. But unfortunately, the band that fired him was Metallica. And Metallica sold 160 million some records, and he only sold like 50 million. So he said later on in his life, in an interview, they'd said in this book that he felt like a failure. The founder of Megadeth, the lead guitarist, felt like a failure.
Yeah.
But then they told the story about this guy, I forget his name as well, which was in the Beatles, and he got kicked out of the Beatles, and the Beatles went on to be the Beatles, and he just went on to be a regular dude. And they interviewed him later on and asked him, he said, the greatest thing ever happened to me is they kicked me out of the Beatles. I met my wife and have my children. He said, I've already accepted that. I would not want to be anywhere else than be with them.
True.
So you have somebody that was Megadeth, multi-millionaire, millions of fans. Yeah, right? Yeah. And so I think that's perception. I think that's a lot of stuff in life is like that, right?
100%, man.
So
the mind.
Yeah, the mind is everything. So let's jump into some nutrition stuff. Let's keep it simple for people that are listening right now that want to get healthy.
Okay.
Where would you start?
So I like this saying from he's a chiropractor and functional medicine doctor out of the States. His name's Dr. Rob Rukowski, and he has the Magnificent Seven, and it's about you gotta eat right, drink right, poop right, move right, think right, speak right, and one of the other ones.
Just do it all right.
He's just doing a bunch of right things. But like when you think about it, all those little pillars.
Yes.
For me, and I know like especially you've been experimenting with your nutrition, like
big time. Yeah.
You're like the most epic nutrition experimenter because of the extremes that you went through with bodybuilding competitions.
Yeah.
So then also when you go to those extremes, you also get to experience how your body actually reacts, right?
100%.
Where you be like, dude, the fact that you can tap into being like, oh, the way I feel with this carb or the way I feel like that.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that, the way they used to talk about how food is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And people used to be way more tapped into like what Ayurvedic. Have you ever heard of Ayurveda?
No.
So they look at like foods as contributing to the medicine and treatment of ourselves, but we've got these different humors to ourselves.
Yeah.
It's like Pitta, Kapha, and Veda.
Yeah.
And it's like one's more fiery. So then in order to kind of contain that fire, you need to eat foods that are cooling and things like that.
Okay.
But I think really back to it, if these people were really attuned to it, they could go and have these foods and be like, okay, for when I eat this and ingest it, I get a cooling effect.
Yeah.
Or when I eat this spices, it speeds up my metabolism, all these things.
Yeah.
And I think that just went with it, with the ancient practices.
Yeah.
But anyways, to go back to what you said, like, you've experimented with all these things, And I think right now you're on kind of a nice like balance of nourishing fats, ancestral stuff.
Well, I've kind of found my diet now.
Yeah, right?
I know what works.
Where it's like, oh, and it works for you, and you can adhere to it, and it's not just in this box or this box, but like mine kind of goes along the same way, where I want to be getting all of those, like I want to be making sure that I hit my proteins and things like that, but I want to make sure that I'm just getting good nourishing fats, good micronutrients. So I do love my beef. I love ghee, butter, and just making sure that I'm having a couple of these like little pillars and stuff like that. But and fermented foods and
exactly. And you have so much good information on all that stuff, and I think that you could almost break the like you kind of have the diets that look like this. You have all the fad diets, right? Which I feel like a lot of fad diets actually have some good principles to them. Like when people say, "Oh, keto's a fad diet," okay, true. But if you're insulin resistant, or you have a ton of inflammation, chronic arthritis, there's some huge benefits to using that for a while until you can start putting carbohydrates back in.
Totally.
The keto diet becomes where people get freaked out because they don't understand what a real keto diet is, right?
Yeah, because we try and market it and dress it up to look
exactly,
good.
Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're supposed to eat 10 pounds of bacon and a jar of peanut butter a day. That's not what it's supposed to be. And then you got diets like where there's like then you got like if it fits your macros, right? So somewhere's in the center. So you have like your fad diets, and then you have like calories in versus calorie out. And I'm so sick of hearing people say that as simple as calories in versus calories out. In an ideal body, 100%. In a body that's functioning correctly, calories in. But why would you even preach that? Like that's what I don't understand. Am I missing something that like? Do you really need a piece of Snickers bar and a piece of pizza every day?
No.
Like when people like, where does it come to the point where there's a bit of like give and take, right? Like, do I think you should deserve to have some of the food you love on a weekly basis? 100%. You and I are big foodies. Yeah. Like I love everywhere as I go. I just like a food fanatic,
me with
right?
So much joy.
Much joy. But I get a lot out of like just eating healthy food too. Like you don't need to like that. I think that's just a sign off, and it's become such a marketing pitch as I can let you eat anything you want. Like just eat 2,000 calories and burn 22 and you're going to lose weight.
And that's the reality.
And there's some truth to that, but there's merit to that because of all the other bullshit of like eat 1,000 calories and do fucking 20,000 steps a day. That gives it merit where people are like, no, that's bullshit. Well, that is crazy, but so is what you're teaching is kind of crazy too, right?
And then they go with a bullshit study to back it up too.
Yeah.
And go, well, if these people ate in a deficit and blah blah blah, and you go, okay.
Yeah, like they're marketing cheat meals and McDonald's and pizza.
And then also though especially when you and I talk lifestyle, we're talking longevity.
Yeah.
Right? And we're going like, I know this is like the little intro for the person, but it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
especially if you continually eat like that, it is going to change you hormonally, which is then going to change how your body reacts to the calories you take in, right?
Exactly, especially over a period of time.
Oh my gosh.
You do like if it fits your macros over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what happens though, even with if it fits your macros. Is what was meant to happen is you eat nutritiously, and if you feel like adding in a muffin to your meal, or you want to have a couple glasses of wine, or you want to add an app to your meal that night while you're out and it's not your cheat meal night, you go for it and you just make it fit your calories. That makes sense. But when it gets to the point where you're saying that a handful of Oreos is equal to a handful of salmon and the same because the calories are the same. No, dude, they're not. The micronutrients is different. What you're getting out of that salmon, how your insulin responds to that is completely different. And it's such a bad message. And then you got like the fad diets, you got this, and then you go over to the holistic side, right? Where it gets so out of control too. Where they're like, no, you can't have any fun. Like you're like, no, you know what I mean?
The world of extremes.
Yeah, like it's like this completely polar opposites, right?
And then so this world of like the crazy extremes where they become super neurotic with it. Yeah. But then that takes away from the market as well, right?
Yeah.
So
well, you said it best to me one time where there was a lady that you knew that ate everything organic, everything grass-fed, super like in tune with the sun, and wouldn't eat vegetables unless it was like the right time of the year or whatever it was, or fruit from Canada, but then wouldn't brush her teeth with certain things and because there was like scared of fluoride or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And to the point where like now you're having like somewhat of a dental issue because you're scared, or you won't put on underarm deodorant that has like some aluminum in it. Like it goes so extreme, right, to one side, and like I'm not sure that's the right message to send either.
No.
So it really makes sense to hear if it fits your macros. But what I think needs to be preached is like, one thing we're not talking about is the air we're breathing in, the thoughts that we're thinking, what's in our water, like where are you getting your water from, right? And then I think the basis of every diet should be made up of clean proteins that come from either wild caught game, so like wild caught fish, grass fed and grass finished beef or bison or elk, some chicken if you enjoy it, pasture raised eggs, and a lot of high quality vegetables that are like, don't cause gas problems and bloating and are hard on your bowels, and also are low oxalate, so you're not going to get a bunch of kidney stones out of them, right? Or over things that are too high in calcium, we don't want those. So we want vegetables that are high in micronutrients that have some fiber in them to help us digest. And then we want to get nutritious fats in, which you get. Nature did a good job at putting a lot of quality fats in salmon and eggs. But there's nothing wrong, like with, I like to put grass-fed butter and coconut oil in my coffee in the morning. Does it have a micronutrient benefit? Not really. But it has fats, and I'm able to get some calories in the morning, and I don't stimulate any insulin, and I'm able to go like 4 or 5 hours without eating, and I feel phenomenal.
Exactly. And then from the coconuts, you're getting some like exogenous ketones.
Exactly, right? But grass-fed butter and coconut oils, I could eat a jar of it. It tastes so good. And then on top of that, I think you need to eat enough carbohydrates to substitute your workload. Mm-hmm. That's it. And then I think you eat a little bit of fructose, and I feel like fructose is medicine. Stan Effernan said that best, that fructose is like medicine. It's not meant to be eaten big amounts of it, but it's so good for stimulating your liver. Fructose is primarily stored in the liver, and using small doses of it throughout the day or at times, because there is like blueberries and stuff have so much micronutrients, and there's lots of properties in grapefruit and oranges and different things, right? I feel like everything on earth has a principle to it. But I think that the majority of our diet should be made up of high quality vegetables and high quality proteins and enough fats to stabilize your insulin and your energy levels. Yeah. And then I think that then we add carbohydrates to it. That's my personal opinion. You use carbohydrates to fuel your lifestyle, not to fuel, so that I feel a certain way, right? In my opinion, if today I said take your carbs out and you couldn't do that, that diet's not good for you. Like if you couldn't stop eating carbohydrates for 3 days and it would throw you, like right now I could stop eating, like I haven't eaten any carbs since, like I usually eat carbs in my last meal at night. Yeah. Is what I do.
Because you work out in the morning? Is that kind of
I've changed my workout to night now. Oh, no. But no, it's just like, the thing is my meal plan is set up right, the way that my diet is, like, so I haven't eaten for, what time is it right now? It's 4:20, right? That's hilarious. Yeah. We can't smoke in here though. So, I ate at 10 o'clock and I feel great right now. I haven't eaten, like I could go until tomorrow and it wouldn't even bother me. Like if we wanted to jump, if you were like, hey, we got to go right now, I would have tons of energy. I could actually fast for the next 2 or 3 days and I'd feel fine. Yeah. Because I completely...
Actually, you know what, truth? I haven't eaten since 10 o'clock.
There you go, right? So I can convert. I can convert.
4 eggs.
Yeah.
I had a little handful of blueberries. Yeah. And then sauerkraut and kimchi.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I like kefir as well.
Yeah, right?
Goat milk kefir.
Is it kefir or kefir?
I say both, actually.
I say them both ways too. But yeah, like I feel like if you're a type of person that, say you ate at 10 o'clock and it's 3 o'clock, something happened, you got busy and you're like, I'm crashing. Yeah. Like I need to eat. Well, that's not normal, man. Like, and I think that what I think is normal is I think at any point in time, your body should be able to prefer carbohydrates or switch to fats.
Be super adaptive.
If you can't add carbohydrates and take them back out, in my opinion, that's just if you're looking to be optimal. Yeah. I think there's an issue there. If your blood sugar's crashing on you at any point in time, it's because your body's out of whack. So carbohydrates, great. I think that, I don't think we need to eat. And like now, if you're a powerlifter, you're a bodybuilder, and you're trying to fill up those muscles and you want high insulin all the time because for muscle, like you're going to grow a lot of muscle with high insulin. It's very anabolic hormone, whether you're injecting it or it's just coming along on its own naturally. I think that's a benefit. But I think for longevity, I think stable blood sugar within healthy ranges, not too low, not too high. Healthy fats, healthy protein. And you said something I think that a lot of people don't talk about, which I don't know why that thing keeps clicking, is poop right. It's an awkward topic.
It is.
It's a very weird topic to talk about. But I think a lot of people have no idea how much that's correlated to your health.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And also I think too, because like even when I look back to it growing up, and I think there were instances of nervous bowel in all of my family, or even within myself before sporting events and those kind of things too, right? How much you realize the mind plays within the gut. But also a lot of people grew up their entire life like, going to the bathroom terribly, right?
Yeah.
They weren't pooping right.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry, guys, we're going here.
Yeah, we're going full out on this one. But we're having some shit talk.
Yeah.
But in reality, you would never associate with what you ate with then how you felt afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was such a disconnect there. But when you do think about that and you actually start breaking it down and you maybe ask yourself those questions, but you had to be put on by somebody that was, you know, in the know and educating you about that.
Yeah.
But so many people I knew probably went undiagnosed with like different, I don't know, gut disorders and things like that for time.
Yeah.
And they never associated what foods they just didn't interact with well, right?
Well, can you imagine you're in a comfortable state. You feel good. Your energy's good. You're not bloated. You feel low in inflammation. You feel loose. You're good. And then you eat a meal and it changes your state.
Mm-hmm.
Either you just ate way too much or the body does not like that food.
Exactly.
There's something not right.
Yeah.
Like when I eat my first meal of the day, I eat twice a day, sometimes 3. Anytime I eat any of my meals that are my regular meals versus my Saturday night, which is like a night where, and it's not even, Saturday night comes and I don't even eat because I'm like craving or I'm anything like that. It's just, I just want to have fun.
True.
I want to drink a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
I want to taste a bunch of different flavors with the wine.
Nice.
And I just want to like turn on some good music and just enjoy the experience. That's all it is. And I don't need to do that every day.
Yeah. Dude,
now,
it's the sensory experience, right?
Is.
Smell and taste.
Yeah.
And you indulge in it. Yeah,
but this is how cool I am with this now that today's Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And if you invited me I have no desire to go eat McDonald's right now or to eat fast food or to smash a big pizza because I'm not even hungry right now and I haven't eaten since 10.
Yeah.
I feel great. But if you wanted to do like a charcuterie board or something and have a glass of wine and we wanted to connect, I'd be like, that's fine. Like, I don't, like, it's, so what? It's Wednesday. It's not going to bother me.
Beautiful.
Like I could go do that. And I'll wake up the next day and I look the same and I feel the same and I jump. Now, if we went.
Don't feel guilty about it.
No, not at all. Like,
exactly.
I could be dead in a couple of days. And if I want to have a human experience with you, I'm going to have it with you. But I don't have that desire to like, I need a bunch of pizza, I need fries, and I need like I have no desire, like I can't remember the last time I bought a Timbit. I don't even know I remember what they have. Like I don't want donuts, I don't want Timbits, I don't like, but on Saturday, like we bought a cake last week, we were at the Italian grocery store in Nobleton. Cousins.
Yeah.
And
you posted about it.
2 of my favorite things when it comes to flavor, I love coconut desserty things or just coconut oil, and I like lemon flavored stuff.
Okay.
And they had a lemon coconut
Yeah,
cake.
so you're like, you gotta buy
I was like,
it.
and it was like on Wednesday or Thursday, and I bought it and I set it in the fridge, and then on Saturday I had it and it was subpar. It was okay.
Yes.
Had 1 slice, maybe 2 little slices. Yeah, it wasn't that great, right? And we had wood fire. We have that little wood fire. Well, it's propane, but it's like a fire pizza oven, and I made some homemade pizza.
Is it working out pretty nicely actually?
It's, you know what, it's subpar itself.
Oh really?
Yeah, I felt like it doesn't. I like a
you-
crispy crust.
Yeah.
And it gets the top real crispy, and because it's a small oven, the heat's so close. And I played with it to try to get it right. It's okay. So once we build the big house, and next year, the year after, then we're going to get the real wood fire pizza oven. We're going to have all the ultimate human experiences.
That's awesome.
Right. So I think, would you agree with my nutrition approach? Like we need some type of let's get some quality proteins, and I believe that if you're getting like quality grass fed, it's expensive. Right, and quality, but I don't think you need as much of it, dude. Because yes, the protein content, but I think what your body will do with a piece of wild caught salmon versus a piece of farm salmon, I don't think they're even comparable.
Not at all.
I'd rather you have 2 ounces of that.
It's true, and the other thing that I will say is like we look at these comparatives and stuff like that, like even to talk about say like looking at the difference between conventional farm foods.
Yeah.
And organically grown or biodynamically grown or whatever those good methods are, right?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of restorative agriculture.
Yeah.
You look at it, but still we're going to argue over this and that, right? Yeah. What method's better or well, there's no difference in the foods. But it's like also you looking at the organic nature where you're getting none of those also maybe less amounts of those harmful byproducts, right?
Yeah.
That is used in conventional farming. You're not getting any of that extra secondhand glyphosate or that's those secondhand anti-eatants that come along with it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, but people still make the argument for the other side when in reality we should just be advocating for our government to put more subsidies towards regenerative agriculture.
Yeah.
And start teaching a new generation of farmers to be like, we can feed families, but we don't have to just be growing like this
soy,
one way.
corn, and rice.
Soy, corn, and rice.
Wheat.
Yeah.
It's if you look at where the money, the
crops.
grants and the money and the investments go, like they're going into completely unhealthy things.
They are, right? And it's like, well, it's going to stay on a shelf for a really long time.
Yeah.
But it's also just like, yeah, but you're going to fix maybe even a big medical issue. You're going to fix maybe even a big mental health issue if we had put money early on to feeding some of those families. Yeah. Like, right? Because, that's where I think about it too. It's just like, we can make that argument about conventional and organic and or whatever farming, but then it's just like, still, would you not want to go just the better way? And would you, like...
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like they talk about like, first, you hear people say all the time the world's so overpopulated. I'm like, have you ever been to Coal Creek, New Brunswick, where I grew up?
Yeah.
I didn't even have any friends, man. It was me and my dog.
Say that again, Coal Creek.
No, like I think that, you know, there's so much farmland around. There's so much ability. It's just, I think that we don't have the right support and the right grants and the government funding to support that type of agriculture, right? Mm-hmm. Like I go out to the guys I buy all my meat from as Wild Meadow Farms. Yep. So they have bison, elk, beef, like cow, and then they have pork, and they raise chickens, all grass-fed, grass-finished. Just a mom and 3 boys. They have 100 acres there, and then I think they're getting like another 50, 60 acres, they said. And they're all about regenerative farming, and they're moving the pigs around. The pigs are just eating grass and rolling around in the dirt. And, you know, I posted about organ meat and stuff like that in them, and I had a lady, super nice lady, just post about, you know, you shouldn't be eating meat, right? She wrote me personally, right? Yeah. And I didn't anything disrespectful, but I can only assume she probably watched Game Changers or something on Netflix, right? Yeah. So like there's this huge disconnect with that as well on animal protein, right? And what it is and what we're doing. Now, if you're eating McDonald's or you're eating Harvey's or you're eating, you know, Domino's and you're getting pepperoni pizza and it's these, do I agree that animals are treated in mass? That's why I don't buy it. I don't buy any mass. If I go out to a restaurant or whatever, then yeah, you're not going to get grass-fed beef there. But when you look at like how the animals grow up where I raised, like they have a better life than some of the humans I know.
Yeah,
man.
True.
Like they're just like
fresh air.
Yeah, dude, walking around in the grass, eating grass, literally, right? And I think that's where these studies that are done on stuff like that. Do I think you need to eat 10 ounces a meal? No. Yeah, but if you're somebody that makes it for a moral decision, I support you. Then that's. No, but if you're trying to say to somebody that having a couple ounces of salmon a day or 1 whole egg to get choline and all these different things that you can't get in other, or eating a little bit of grass-fed, grass-finished beef is unhealthy for you, you're completely disconnected from the reality of how human evolution has come through, what our ancestors done, and why our teeth are the way they are, what our DNA is made up of, and what we need on a micronutrients and a macronutrients level. You're disconnected.
Exactly.
Right? And you've become so blinded and so biased because it's a moral decision. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it being a moral decision. Why? Like, I get it, dude. I have a huge heart too. I grew up in a hunting community, but like just to like even like I could never shoot a female deer or something, or a big moose is one thing.
Seriously though, you're confronted with those like little delays.
Yeah, like you get that, right? Because we grew up soft, man. We grew up in like a, you know, and the way society is, it's like, well, I don't really need to kill that animal. And I get where they're coming from. It's the mass farming. I'm behind you. I want to get rid of mass farming too, but your movement shouldn't be shut down farming. It should be like shut down that farming and let's invest in regenerative farming. Exactly. Like, what do you think's going to happen if we shut down all the farms? Do you think we're just going to let them go and they're just going to, like, the cows are just, cows wouldn't exist, man. The coyotes would eat them, dude. They can't run a coyote.
Yeah, I know.
The cows wouldn't even exist.
Yeah, we'd have an overabundance of wolves for a couple of years.
It's so disconnected, right? Yeah. And I get it, though, like, on that side, and I'm not being rude. I love everybody and I love everybody's decision. But when people try to manipulate people and they take that information that it's not the right thing. What we need to focus on is small farming, small communities, regenerative farming that's putting nutrients back in the ground. Because the reason your red pepper and your carrot doesn't have iodine anymore, because the ground is stripped, right? We're mass farming in the wrong ways, and we're not regenerative farming in the right ways.
100%.
You know, so I think that's something people need to talk about. And I want to talk one more thing on nutrition before we talk about psilocybin and mental health.
Okay, cool.
You had talked about an article or multiple articles about a doctor. There was 2 doctors. They're both dead now, I believe. One believed that like where preservatives come from, right? Where he was saying that like the bacteria and preservatives, he created a lot of preservatives, like whole milk was bad for you.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a study, and this is, remember Michaela's a client of mine that's a nutritionist. She's going to be coming on. She's coming on Saturday, actually. She's coming in to speak.
Oh, really? That's
so
awesome.
You had spoke about and I guess the one doctor that we chose their way, but it would completely revolutionize the way we look at health.
Yeah. So, and this was an interesting one. So essentially, it was there were two schools of thought that came from it. These are both, I'm pretty sure, both French scientists at the time. So you had Louis Pasteur, who.
Okay. I'm impressed that you even remember that.
Yeah, but because he created pasteurization.
Okay, no,
right?
I'm not so
Heated
impressed.
up to kill.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
Makes sense.
Heated
up to kill the
right.
Yeah.
And from those guys as well, because they started looking at microorganisms, and then they realized, they started looking at the microscopic world, and the microbiology field grew from that. But refrigeration came from those guys. So Pasteur and pasteurization and I think a lot of it had to do with beer, actually, at the time, beer and wine, because they were looking at these things and the different yeasts and whatnot. But Pasteur had his germ theory, and in his mind, he thought that all bacteria and stuff had a negative aspect, right?
Okay.
It would spoil things. It was going to be the invisible lead of death. As people got sick, they didn't know why it got sick, just as in today, right? We have an invisible virus or an invisible bacteria. And then you had the other guy, and I can't remember his name, but he had terrain theory. So what he would look at with the terrain is that you had this symbiosis of all these things. So if the terrain was healthy, if there was the proper nutrients going in and the proper mechanisms in place that would either oxygenate it or be the right environment for whatever species, right? For us, we need sunlight, we need proper things, then we thrive. But on a microscopic level, he looked at these bacteria, and the only reason they ever got out of hand was when they would go into a bad terrain. And then, but you see the same thing occur right now with people and illness, right? Yeah. Only a person's terrain where our body is our terrain. So if our stomachs are off or our body's out of whack, even posturally, that means we're not getting the proper nutrients delivered to our muscles or to the proper areas. Yeah. That also means that even pH levels are off, and you need pH.
Such a minute amount.
Minute amount for certain
death on either side, right?
Yeah, certain enzymes to work too, right? So if that's skewed off this way, then this will thrive here, and if that's skewed off this way, blah blah blah. And the only factor was that Pasteur was more affiliated with politicians and rich people than the other guy. Yeah. But on Pasteur's deathbed, he even said that he was wrong, right? But we've still based so much of our medicine.
Is that antibiotics? Is that pasteurizing milk? Is it preservatives in food?
Exactly.
All that stuff.
So pasteurization came through that. But they also, the way they looked at it, we had a very linear relationship with bacteria, right? And we had an idea that we only looked at one way, versus Pasteur was looking at all of these interactions, right? Because it's a systems game. Yeah. So that's the issue right now with a lot of medicine, is they only look at one pathway. Yeah. So even with our different pharmaceuticals, they want to look at one way. They look linearly. Okay, I'm going to shut off this pathway, which is going to inhibit this, blah blah blah. But then they don't look at, if that gets inhibited, how is that going to affect this guy over here, or how is that going to affect this pathway? And so that's where the terrain theory is huge, and a lot of naturopaths go that way. A lot of other people German biological medicine and stuff, is they look at those things, right? Yeah. And there's a huge advance, but there's less money, I think, in those realms, right? Whereas right now we're at the tail end of pharmaceuticals.
I honestly feel more hopeful that I think that's why there's such an attack. What's going on right now? Because I do feel like the new generation is waking up, bro. Yeah. Economically, people the generation I grew up in, right? Which is we're kind of the tail end. It's different where I grew up, because they'd be considered a millennial. I guess I was born in '83. Maybe the end or the beginning of millennials, or was millennials in the '85 or something like that. Or
I don't know the branching.
It's the '90s, baby. Anyway.
Pretty much, right?
But I feel when I grew up, nobody really voted. Now people are really paying attention to politics. Nobody. If you talk to somebody when I was growing up about economics or inflation, they didn't really know. People know now. A lot of the new kids that are coming up talk about this stuff. Yeah. They're really into cryptocurrencies, and they understand that. You can talk to the younger generation, and they completely understand how gold was traded how that was given to America to stop from people like being invaded into their countries,
Yep.
and how America held that, and they would give you a piece of paper that would say you had this much gold in America, to when Nixon took it off the gold standard in 1971, so that now the US dollar wasn't comparative and they could just print as much as they wanted. They understand inflation, they understand how economics work, and I think they understand that their parents and the baby boomers and their great grandparents are sick. They understand that the voting system is messed up. They understand the schooling system is messed up. They understand that the paying system and inflation is messed up. And I think that a lot of the kids that are coming up, I do believe there's a lot of corruption within the school, and there's a lot of Marxism and extreme leftism that's being taught. But I still think there's a lot of hopefulness, because when I speak to most people, they're very central.
Yes.
They're very central.
And we've talked about this.
Most people just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone, man. Let me
You
make
good?
a good
I'm good.
living.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most people they don't want a homeless problem. They don't want to be full capitalism, let the strong survive. They care about those people. They they'd like to pay a little less taxes. They really don't want to go to war. Like the new generation, I don't know any young kids. It's like he's cheering like, let's go to war with Russia or Korea or China or whatever it is. Like, it's not like, where is this even coming from, right? So I feel like there's a lot of hopefulness with the health system, with the nutritional system. Like stores like Goodness Me 10, 15, 20 years ago couldn't even survive. Like you were like a yogi if you went to a store like that. Now those stores are packed.
Yeah.
So I do feel hopeful.
Yeah, and I hope that those stores also, like, right now, it's so associated, though, right, with, like, it's almost like a status thing, right? And I hope that we can get to the point that, like, I know people that go, oh, you just shop at the rich people store. Mm-hmm. And I go, like, I just hope that we can get on that level where anybody can be getting good food, right?
Yeah. Well, if people looked at it, if there was a way to, like, if there was a screen up there and you picked up organic piece of fruit or a vegetable, or you picked up like a piece of steak and it went and it like showed iodine, selenium, vitamin D3, iron, calcium, whatever it was, and that's what you were buying micronutrients versus just buying the macro of like, oh, how many carbs is in that, you'd be like, oh shit, this is worth a lot more than that bag of whatever that is.
That's truth.
And I think that's where a lot of people aren't realizing that we're not buying that stuff. So like that they call it the rich person store, but it's really not. I think people are just overeating and over-consuming. Like, you can actually eat very well, fairly affordably, if you're smart about it. Yep. It's your protein that's expensive.
Yes.
Right? But you don't have to overeat that. Let's talk about mental health. Okay. Right? Yeah. I'm not saying you're a mental health expert, but I feel like you're fairly educated on it. And I think that we're facing the greatest epidemic is going to be the health crisis that's coming, the mental health crisis that's coming. Mm-hmm. I think that it is simple as we are just super disconnected from earth and from what really like a real sense of meaningfulness and being spiritualism. I think that's where it's really come from. I think we've become so overly stimulated with digital stuff. I think our food's bad, our gut bacteria is off, our air quality is bad. Everybody's running on the wheel to try to buy something to impress someone else. Yeah. I think there's so many people I know that have a good heart that are making $20-$30 an hour, that don't see them ever being able to buy a house, that don't ever see a way out, that they're going to have to work till they're 60. They are lucky enough to maybe take one vacation a year. They just loathe and dream all week long about Friday night. So that they can have anxiety all Sunday evening to go back to the. Oh
man, right, and just dreading it.
Yeah, I think it's all that stuff, and I think that I think that's the important stuff's not being taught in school. Like, I think that, like, if I've already told Nat when we have kids, I'm not putting them in school. They're going to be homeschooled. They're going to be, they'll be socialized in sports. And I'm going to take them everywhere with me.
Yeah, that was going to be
they'll be right with me. Yeah, they're the best dad in the world. Like, I'm going to read 1,000,000 books before I have kids. And I'm going to do everything I can to not fuck them up like most parents do. And because beautiful. I think there's only one thing that really matters is self-love. Like, I think that if you have something, I don't care if it's like my kid likes to make glasses, he wants to play with rocks. If it sets his soul on fire, or her soul on fire, and she's happy and she feels proud of what she does or he does, and they have a sense of meaningfulness, and I'm the best person at this, I think if you can find that, you got something special, whatever that is, right?
That's 100%.
And then on top of that, let's educate them on nutrition. know how to eat well, how to sleep well, how to exercise, how to take care of yourself, how to, do that from a young age. And let's teach them about the economy and the real world, and teach them about finances so that they never have to worry about money, and any of the struggles that they put themselves in are going to be chosen struggles.
Because you and I both came from that same family.
Exactly.
Where
money was nobody, there was food on the table, but there was stress around money.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the worst spots to grow up is like lower middle class, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Or middle class. Upper middle class, not so bad.
Right in that realm, yeah.
Because it's not bad enough to run away.
Yeah.
But it's not horrible to the, you just like, I'm going to take on the world.
Yeah, there's like this comfortable content.
Right? But yet you don't have the connections to like get an investor or someone to teach you economics and
they're also not at the place, like your parents were not at the place where they could be doing cool investments and getting into that either, right? Because they were just worried about making sure food was on the table and
getting
the house was over.
Just being good folks on being good people and making out of it and doing what you were taught, doing what your parents showed you. So those are kind of the things that I see in a very general, a very quick, and overlook of like why I think people are the way they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Why people are so messed up.
Dude, and see, taking that step back and being able to look at like all of the system at play.
Yeah.
And that's the broad range we need versus just to be like, oh well, genetic or something like that. But it's so much more. It's a huge system.
It is, and I'm sure there's a certain percentage of people that are out there that no matter, they do everything we just talked about, they're just always going to have those. They're going to have those triggers. They're going to have that paradigm. And even if they worked on themselves for a decade, they're just always it's always gonna be there.
Yeah.
There's always gonna be that voice that says like, take your life, or you're no good, or you're a piece of shit, and you're always gonna talk down to yourself. You're always gonna get upset when somebody says something a certain way to you. You're gonna have good days and bad days, and no matter what, you're gonna have to fight it for the rest of your life. But like I seen in a Joe Rogan podcast where he said that the thing is you have to fight it. You have to keep fighting that. Don't ever give up on it. Don't let that voice win. 100%. And then I think there's other people that do all the things I talked about, and they can go on to live a happy life. We all have our own struggles. We all have our own story, and some people it's easier than others. But that being said, on the last podcast, Dr. Khan that I had was talking about psilocybin and how he can't wait for it to get legalized. Yeah, he posts about it all the time.
Which was cool for him to
right?
Hear him
well, he
say
believes in, dude, he's a real dude.
Yeah.
He's a doctor that went in for a reason, came out the other side, realized the curriculum needed updated, realized they gave me some great knowledge.
Totally.
But there's so much more out there, and I'm going to advance myself to make a huge difference, and I want to focus on this, and this, and I'm going to educate myself on a multitude of different topics, and he's just real.
Yeah.
He's just, and he practices what he preaches,
That's
right?
Super nice.
But I've always felt, so I'm just going to be real. I've told you this. I'm just going to be really real on the podcast. When I was growing up, I experimented with different drugs. Yeah. I grew up in a small town. I was a good kid, but I got into some trouble. I've tried a lot of different things in my life. Just so you know, I have a really good heart, and I'm a great person. I have no bad intentions on people, but I made some mistakes when I was growing up. That's the truth. So I've always felt like I had a spiritual outlook on life. Like I always felt like there was just more.
Yeah.
Like we weren't being told the whole story, and I always felt optimistic about death. I've never really worried about death. I've always felt like there's just so much more there, and there's a lot of love out there, and that there's supposed to be a meaning to life, and that there's like a circular thing, and everything's interconnected.
In your small town, did you grow up with any even like religious?
They were all weird. Yeah, but the religion. I don't mean any rude. I mean like Pentecostal people and stuff. They used to I never went, but supposedly they like do the Holy Ghost thing and like pretend like they like passing out. And maybe it's real. I don't know, but I always found like around religion that there was a sense of like, I believe in God. First of all, let me get that straight. Yeah. But I believe in my own God. I've never read the Bible. I've never really been to church. Went to Sunday school like 7 times probably. But I just know there's a higher power, and I believe and I have a sense of optimism, a sense of hopefulness, a sense of spiritualism, and I believe in good versus evil. Yeah. I believe that there is a devil and there is a God, but I don't believe it I feel like half of every atom in your body is good and evil. And I believe that, like, not that you are evil, but I believe that they're just everything is like half of it is made up of evil. There's a balance, right? True. And choose on what you feed is what is going to become real. And I do believe that I believe in karma, I believe in energy, and I believe you can, a lot of problems come to you, but you cause a lot of your own problems too by doing evil onto people. I believe that, when you wish evil on people, you do evil to people, that no matter how hard you fight it, there's going to be evil come back to you, or something's going to balance it. It's going to teach you a lesson to stop thinking that way. But on top of it, I always felt that like a lot of religions were we kind of got off topic, but we're going to keep going. That religion, sometimes it gets the way they preach it and they talk about it. I think that's why a lot of people, where they lost them, right?
Totally.
Like, I believe that, I think if you go back, you imagine a bunch of good-hearted people, 100 people going into a church on a Sunday, you got death in your family, there's, my wife cheated on me, I'm going financially broke, and everybody's cheering and chanting to the same song, saying we love you, hug each other, it's going to be okay, brother, have hope. That's healthy, man.
Oh, totally.
That's healthy.
That's unity. There's
it's
community.
Unity, there's community, there's hopefulness. It's all believing in the same thing. There's energy, your heart rates are going up, your energy, you're vibrating at another level.
Coherence even going on.
Right? Yeah. And maybe I'm helping you in a low time, you're helping me in a low time. And I think that's community, that's beautiful. But where it gets to the point where it's like, if you do this and this, you're going to hell. Like, I think that's where they lose people. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's where there was like, I guess the power struggle that's come through it over time, right? Where they wanted to, for some reason with it, and maybe that's the error of man, is that power is this addictive thing, and they wanted that over people.
100%, right? So, well, I think that the church was the law at one time, right?
I'm pretty sure the Latin root of religion, the word, is like means to bind you, to tie you. Yeah. So I watched a podcast last night with a very interesting individual. I'm hoping to have him on here at some point, so I'm not going to say his name, but he mentioned that where the church lost is when the printing press came out. Oh, and the church actually tried to stop it. Because people were actually people were printing. I forget how many books had been written up to the printing press, and after that, it was all scribed. Yeah. Then there was it just blew up, so people were able to put their own opinion on stuff, and people were, because everything that you are and you know is information that was given to you, correct or incorrect. I could raise you and tell you everything wrong in your life, and you would believe it. And this is a little off topic. We're going to get back on psilocybin here in a second. But one thing that stuck in my head is I watched a podcast with a Navy SEAL that was in Afghanistan. And he was talking about perception, and it got super realistic. Where he talked about he was he got in a gunfight with Taliban or whatever, and they both ran out of bullets. Then it turned to a knife fight, so they were stabbing each other. And then he got a hold of that knife, and then the knives were dropped, and he's on the ground. And he said, "I had a hold of this guy, and I'm on top of him, literally crushing his head on the ground, like I'm killing him, smashing his skull." And he's looking me in the eyes, and he said, "In that moment when I was taking that man's life, I realized he thought he was right." He thought I was the evil one. I'm over here fighting for my country, but he didn't. People that do evil things don't think that they're wrong. No, exactly.
Right? So your perception that's why we have to, everything that's going on in the world right now, people that don't want to take something, other people that do, people that think you should put something on your face versus something, you have to realize that, do you actually think that people that don't want to take that thing, do you actually think they're just being stubborn, or do you think they're scared? Do you think maybe they're worried about it? Maybe they got white coat syndrome. Maybe something happened to them in the past where their doctor gave them bad advice 100%. And they're scared. And now you're going to try to guilt them into it and get angry at them instead of just loving them and trying to educate them a bit and help them along the way and still love them even though that you're protected. It's crazy. We need to get back to...
Dude, that's such a good point, though.
It is, dude. It is. Yeah. Perspective is everything, dude. Because everything that you can never, ever understand it. Like, how does that saying go? There's two brothers that had an alcoholic father. And one brother says, "I don't drink because my dad was an alcoholic," and the other one's an alcoholic because my dad was a drinker. Yeah. Two boys raised up the same. Everything that one brother said and the other one, they have two different perceptions of what happened, even though they grew up in the same house. Everything that's instilled in you, every bit of education you've got, every lie you've been told, every person that ever hurt you, every experience you ever remembered, everything that's hardwired into your mind is your perception. And I can never, ever, ever duplicate that, replicate it, or understand it. So for me to judge you at any point in time for you being rude to me, for being angry to me, for being sad, for being unreasonable, doing the things you do, treating people the way you are, seeing things from your perception, if anybody ever judges you for that, they're a fucking asshole because they don't know where you're coming from. So people need to step back and be more empathetic and take a step. And I've been guilty of that in my life too, right? Like, you want people to act a certain way and you have no idea what they've been through, man. You have no idea. How do you know that you're right? What if you're wrong?
Oh, and we've talked about this.
Right? What if I'm wrong about everything I know?
But at the same time, like you said, we're a product of all of our experiences, our environment, all of these things. Yeah. All of the input we get, and then our output is based off of that input, right? Yeah. And all of these things. And
100%, dude. Yeah. 100%. And I think that's where we've dropped the ball big time. Yeah. Is that we just assume everybody sees the world through our lens, and how come they don't think the way I think?
How come you can't see the way I see?
How come you can't see it? Because, dude, they're looking through the same lens as you, man.
Right?
Right? So just love them. They're not like, what? I don't get it. right? So it's very frustrating for me.
There's so many of those.
Yeah.
So many of those dogmas.
Yeah. So let's jump back on. We were talking about mental health. And I wanted to jump in the conversation. Let's circle back to.
We'll circle back to the doors of perception with psilocybin then.
Yeah. Because I feel like my perception is different than a lot of people I meet spiritually. And I think it's because when I was growing up, I experimented a few times with LSD, right, and with psilocybin, with magic mushrooms. When I was doing it back then, the few times that I did it, it was all for fun.
Yeah.
As I got older, a few times that I participated in the last while, it was on. I had it all set up. I wrote out the things that were in my life that were stressing, who I wanted to become, where I thought I needed to work, what I wanted to get from the experience, the music, the blankets, the water, what I ate that day, the timing, what I was going to focus on while it was going on, and the most healing experience of my life.
Yeah.
And you realize in those moments, which I've never done ayahuasca, but I want to go and do an ayahuasca ceremony. I would do it with you. Very few people will I ever participate in any of that experience. DMT, all these things. But I think that's like going to revolutionize how we look at like how people feel connected. Now they're saying some people don't really get that same experience out of it, but for me, I'm not. And this isn't advice in any way that you should go experiment until you get. Well, there's places you can go in the States and stuff where you can go do it safely.
Yeah.
But the few times that I've done it in my adulthood, it's been the most healing experience of my life, and I think it's been the same for you.
100%.
Yeah.
And I would say too, right? It's like the connotation that goes around with it, right? If you are taking this thing, but you think, oh, it's just gonna get me fucked up, or you know what I mean? Like that's where I talk to so many people that think of mushrooms as just that old high school drug that like, hey, I got the giggles, I wanted to take a handful,
so much more, man.
Right? Yeah. And you realize that if you put respect towards this, and you look at it almost as like this, I don't know, healing experience, or not even healing, we don't have to throw that word on it, but just this really cool experience. And then like a lot of the first time I took it was in Halifax with a really good group of guys, a crew of people that I was working with, and the one guy was a little bit of like a professional drug taker, right?
Okay.
There's always the
Not my first rodeo. He had a fanny pack? Did he have a fanny pack?
Dude, and you know what I mean? He orchestrated it. So he basically set it up and he said, okay, we're going to do this before sunset. We're going to be on the Citadel Hill. So we get to overlook the Halifax Pier or whatever. And he said, you get to see the contrast of light and dark when your eyes adapt to it and stuff like that. So we're there. The sun is just going down. So you get that beautiful last minute shimmer. And then that's also when you get that visual priming, like 4K. And I'm like, to me, this was the first time, and it was just like such an amazing visual experience. And I was like, holy crap. And then the buddy that I was with would come to us and he'd say, look at this leaf, or look at this. And you'd get amazed by it, right? Yeah. And you were breathing differently, and there were all these things. And from that little introductory experience where it was just like, beautiful, spiritual, like heartwarming too, right? You like laughed, but it was like this old remembering laugh, right? Yeah. And you're like looking up at the sky, and just like a lot of these things that you took for granted. Yeah. And it recentered me to be like, oh yeah, this is what's important to me again. Yeah. And life, man. Family, life. Yeah, man. Oh, why did I let this artificial society?
Why am I letting that eat me up?
Why am I letting that?
Yeah, and pull me away from being grounded. Yeah.
And you can you take some of those ins, or you can also let some other things out, like you said with yours, where it was like really cathartic and just like purged out stuff, right? Yeah. And then so after I had that, I'm also like one of those people too, where like, dude, I grew up in the small town too, so we had that preconceived notion of like, you had that little bit of...
You didn't grow up in a small town, first of all. I know where you grew up, dude.
Innisfil. Dude,
that's like a city, bro. What are you
Stroud was a little farm town.
Yeah,
you got it.
You don't know it. He has neighbors, just so you know, okay?
But, we were hop, skipping, a jump away from Barrie. But
he doesn't live on 100 acres.
It was small enough. I wish it was on
It was smaller than Barrie, for sure.
It was smaller than Barrie. You had your little community, and everybody kind of still knew everything about everybody. But... also come from like super conservative parents where there was still like that, they came from that reefer madness time, stuff like that, right? Yeah. So anyways, I always grew up pretty clean edge though, straight edged, and then that was me at 20. Yeah. And after that I got super, like I was so impressed by it that I wanted to research it, because that's just like in my nature that I'm going to read more about it. And then from that I just like did so much research on some really cool people that were speaking up about research on it in the 1950s and 1960s, right?
Yeah.
And like I read back to the history of LSD, the Swiss chemist that synthesized it, and how he experienced it for the first time. Do you ever hear that story?
Yes. Yeah. He'd go for walks and stuff.
No, but like when he first found it, he was like working on some type of drug for the Swiss pharmaceutical company. No, and essentially he had synthesized LSD, and he was working on something that was going to be like a blood rejuvenator, some type of like good
pharmaceutical. Came across this by accident.
And then he synthesized it, and some got on him, and he ended up ingesting like a little bit of it, went home to ride his bike, and he was like, had the craziest bike ride ever, right?
Yeah.
And then the next day in the lab, he told them about his experience, and then they did another test, and then it went from there. And so then they decided to take this and then send it to a few psychiatrists or psychologists and stuff like that and see, experiment with your patients with this kind of stuff, right? And it wasn't until like even with Nixon when he did his war on drugs where all of that shit stopped.
I think the Flower Childs were onto something, dude.
Yeah.
I think they knew, right?
But even there's extremes with that too.
Like I don't believe you could take mushrooms and hate somebody. Like I don't think you can have hate in your heart at the same time. Now, I remember one story, there's one story you told me about a friend that said some weird stuff, right? But for the most part, I feel like I think we're so disconnected from Mother Earth and from our spiritual side, right? And there's one thing that I take away from it is you're sitting by a tree and you realize like that tree's living, right? Like it's breathing, it's taking in your carbon monoxide and it's giving you back oxygen, and like all the little plants and animals and all the different things that are going on. And then you realize you're like, my heart's beating and I don't have to make it beat. And then you think about you inhale this air into your lungs, and then it goes into through your nervous system, and it nourishes your body and keeps you alive, and you're able to drink water and eat. And there's all this abundance on this earth, and it's like, how beautiful is earth? Like, what if this is heaven and maybe there's darkness? But there's all these things, and you just really get a good perception of like, okay, like I'm definitely going to be happy for the next month just like being where I'm very grateful, right? And I think that a lot of people like the microdosing and stuff like that. I think I'm hoping that it comes out and becomes legalized and they can start helping people with it, because in my experience in the position that I'm in right now, I get to speak to a lot of people and people are really, really struggling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hurting people. Some of the messages I see and some of the people that speak to me, it's like it's really bad out there. And it was bad before all this stuff that happened in the last 2 years.
Especially all of this stuff that just keeps piling on to people right now.
Yeah.
And then so many people feel helpless right now or misguided, and really we're at a crossroads, man, of like understanding, because we just had an abysmal, like in Canada, abysmal political thing go down.
Yeah.
We have all of this craziness swirling around us, and I can understand how people are just getting eat up by it.
Chewed up, dude, and spit out,
Yeah, we need sometimes you need that thing to kind of take you back and regroup.
Yeah. 100%.
Like
that was a good talk, dude.
Yeah.
That was a good talk. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that one thing that was really cool with mushrooms too is the fact that like the mechanism that how it works is like, for us, we evolved later on to have this conscious aspect to us.
Yeah.
So in our prefrontal cortex, this is our self-monitoring. This is your executive functioning. So this is where you're kind of being like, how do I act in society right now? Or how do I do this? When you take psilocybin or anything similar to that, it kind of inhibits it, right?
Yeah.
Even similar to alcohol at the beginning, it inhibits it. So then you stop thinking so much about what other things are doing, and it has a more raw or just a different perspective for you to see things too, right?
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, I mean, we definitely need a change in the world. We need a change in the Medicare system and the nutritional aspect, how we're living our life, how we're breathing, how we're moving, what we're doing with our time, what we're consuming, what we're learning, how we're treating each other. And I think that, but I am very hopeful that I think we live in the safest time and the best time, even though it sounds crazy, but I do believe good is going to prevail. Is there any words you want to leave to the people before we check out? I think we just did a Rogan podcast. I think we did an hour and a half. I think the last podcast he did was like 4 or 5 hours. He did with one of his comedian friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's I always find like an hour and a half is a good one.
Yeah, it's a good time.
So, dude, it was a great talk.
Yeah.
I think this is a great podcast too. I feel like there's a lot of good stuff in there. I really do. So, anything you want to leave with the people? And do you want to have a drink of scotch or what?
I think we should.
We're going to sign off and have a little do you want scotch or tequila? Scotch is good, man. I'm not I'm more of a tequila guy, but the scotch,
that'd be brilliant.
It was a gift from a guy that I connected with some business, and he did very well. And
really?
so he dropped me off a gift.
Well done.
And it's aged in rum barrels, so it's got a sweet taste to it.
Cool.
And it's not super smoky, so it's actually nice. So let's have a cheers and sign off. Anything you want to leave the people with?
You know what? I think like as far as everything's going right now, cheers, brother.
Cheers, bud.
Thank you so much. That is nice.
It is good,
right?
right?
Nice little sweet.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is like it's reiterated amongst so many different messages, but if we just focus on ourselves, put a little bit of that attention too towards us as the individual sometimes, and make sure that we're covering those pillars that are just foundations of ourselves, then we could do so much more for our communities and so much more for other people, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we get lost in this rat race. We get lost in this society. We get lost with all these expectations where you should be. But I think when it comes down to it, and just maybe you have to go and find that silence within yourself, but then realize that, hey, this purpose of me is also trying to attain this higher self and trying to figure out some of these universal questions that are within our soul, right?
Yeah.
And lead with your heart, because I think that's like where there's so much true power from it.
Yeah.
You know.
I love it, dude.
Yeah.
It is. And I want to say thank you for coming on. And we're going to jump off and have some scotch. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I will see you in the next podcast.